Barefoot shoes are thin, flexible footwear that help you replicate the feeling of walking barefoot on the ground while giving you that little bit of protection. They also happen to be arguably some of the ugliest shoes in the world, which makes their popularity that much more interesting. So in this video, we're gonna talk about why that might be. Running or walking barefoot is not a new idea. In fact, it is the oldest idea. However, the shoe industry has monetized this old idea only recently, about 20 years ago. This barefoot shoe hype really set in with the publication of Born to Run, which was written by Christopher McDougall in 2009. This was then followed by an article released in 2010 which compared the different strike patterns between barefoot and regular shoe runners. Now, since these publications have come out, barefoot shoes have had a bit of a roller coaster ride in popularity. In 2012, following that big blow up hype around those two articles, the minimalist shoe category made up 15% of all running shoe sales. Then there was a bit of a blip after that because in 2016 they had dropped to about 3%, likely to do with that whole Vibram scandal, which we're gonna talk about a little bit later. But in 2020, these minimalist shoes made a comeback specifically in the trail running sector, where they make up over 36% of shoes sold. Now, regardless of these smooshy statistics and weird history, it's undeniable that there is a large and pretty passionate group of people who love barefoot shoes. I mean, there's tons of videos about it on YouTube alone. So in this video, we wanted to break down some of that hype and figure out if there's something to it beyond their obvious fashion appeal. So we started with their health benefits. There is a lot of scientific information and terminology and jargon when it comes to talking about the way that our feet behave inside of shoes. For example, it is proven that footwear of all kinds result in anatomical and functional changes, including reduced foot width and forefoot spreading under load due to the constraints of the shoe structure. In easier English, basically what this means is that shoes are not perfectly built for our feet, and therefore they squish them and push them in weird ways that makes them behave differently than they would if they were barefoot. The freedom and flexibility of barefoot shoes as a counter-argument to that is basically their whole marketing plan. Having a flexible and wide footbed for barefoot shoes is the logical response to that. Not only do we squeeze our feet into these shoes, but it can result in an increase in stride length and greater dorsiflexion at foot-ground contact. Dorsiflexion just means, well, I'll let this clip explain it.
Dorsiflexion, the back or upper side of the foot, moves toward the shin, decreasing the angle between these two surfaces.
Essentially what they're saying is that when you put on shoes, you walk differently than you would when you don't have shoes on. And I mean, it doesn't take a PhD candidate to figure that out. But that's not all. Apparently, when you run barefoot, your weight is more evenly distributed every time your foot falls on the ground. Likely because you're having to use the natural spring of your toes when you land, and you have a wider surface area for that cushioning to take place. Walking barefoot is also going to be a lot better for your natural balance. That's why you don't see gymnasts walking along the pole wearing their New Balance sneakers. Now, just from kind of a logical standpoint, this feels like it makes sense, but sadly, they're just not a very appealing looking shoe because of the societal standards that we have for shoes. I mean, look at these friggin' things. I mean, the toes? We can get rid of the toes. That seems ridiculous. So we have reviewed a number of articles outside of the stuff written by Dan Lieberman, who is sort of like the oracle of the barefoot running scene, and what we found is pretty inconclusive. Little research on barefoot walking has been completed in adults approaching older age where foot problems and gait deficiencies are most prevalent, and thus investigation into this population is required to determine the impact of barefoot walking across the lifespan. Clearly, it seems that the theoretical benefits attributed to barefoot and minimalist running are not supported by the current evidence available. We still have no idea what that means for overall joint health. If you go to a Barefoot shoe website, you will see a lot of vague claims about the health benefits of barefoot shoes. Not surprisingly, this is probably because they have learned their lesson vicariously through Vibram, who notoriously went to court over the false health claims that they made about their shoes. So this often used argument that we as humans evolved walking on bare feet and therefore that's the healthiest thing to do is just not scientifically backed up by what we have available today. That being said, I have to admit that even doing the research for this video and looking at the statistics, it kind of feels like it should make sense that barefoot shoes would theoretically, in my brain, be the most natural and healthy way to walk. But it just seems like the science isn't exactly supporting that yet. Now, we learned pretty quickly that the health benefits of barefoot shoes is probably not the main driving factor behind why people wear these shoes and love them so much. As much as barefoot shoes are about your own personal health, they are also about what wearing these shoes says about you. Barefoot shoe companies online represent a more conscious and intentional lifestyle. Likewise, the people who buy and own barefoot shoes want to be seen as healthy, outdoorsy, athletic, and conscious of the world around them. At first, we sort of thought that this was maybe just a sort of trend, but as we dug into these various company websites, it became obvious that environmental sustainability and being seen as a progressive company was extremely important for their business model. Take Vivo Barefoot for an example, the world's largest barefoot shoe seller. They have been a certified B Corp since 2020 with a pretty good score of 98.8. And literally on their website, they claim that wearing their shoes is a sustainability statement. On top of being a registered B Corporation, which is a third-party certification process that ensures that a lot of the claims that companies make are true, they're also using a lot of alternative materials. They're using algae and recycled plastic bottles to make their shoes, and they even recently launched a shoe recycling program, which is pretty cool. So is the barefoot shoe community a cult? Well, no, obviously not. I don't think there's punch bowls, and giant farm cooperatives out in the middle of nowhere. But the barefoot shoe industry has tapped into a community of people like no other shoe company has before them. The environmental, healthy, conscious consumer. These are athletic people who believe that they were born to run. Outdoor enthusiasts who literally want to feel the ground below their feet. And minimalists who want to have as little in their life as possible. All of these things are why these companies are so enthusiastic to embrace sustainability as a part of their company culture, regardless of whether or not they can fully back up those claims. But by wearing barefoot shoes, you are saying that I care about the planet, or I am an athlete, or I am a healthy person. And very few brands tap into that feeling and represent it as fully as barefoot shoes do. Now, in terms of your own personal preference and experience, I can't say that barefoot shoes are going to work for you or be better than any other option. But if you are in need of a new pair of shoes, barefoot shoes might be a more sustainable option for you, as long as you don't buy the ones with the little toes, because those things are gross and they should be outlawed. But hopefully you enjoyed this video, or at least you found it interesting. And if you did, please consider liking it and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers, and every person who decides to join this journey helps us create more videos like this. So thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.